This contradiction of interior and exterior space arises again in cinnamon shops. Here Schultz opens with the narrator's father having secret conversations with unseen world of mouse holes, dark corners, chimney vents, and dusty spaces under the floor. To get the father away from his tightly domestic world, the mother and narrator decide to take him to the theater. On the stage curtain are masks and constellations of stars that the narrator does not get to see pulled open. Instead, he has to run back home to get his father's wallet. On the trip home, he gets lost looking for the cinnamon shops, themselves fronts for seedier businesses, and eventually takes a cab ride outside of the city. There, he sees the spectacle that the theater-goers expected to see behind the starry curtains. Of the starry theater curtain, Schultz writes, "I knew that the moment was imminent, when the tension of mystery would reach its zenith, and the swollen skies of the curtain would really burst open to reveal incredible and dazzling events." This inside artificial sky promises the surprise of a false world that could bring the outside into a room. The narrator, though, makes the opposite view of the city, where he is beyond its borders, saying, "The transformations of the sky, the metamorphoses of its multiple domes into more and more complicated configurations were endless. Like a silver astrolabe, the sky disclosed on that magic night its internal mechanisms, and showed in infinite evolutions the mathematics of its cogs and wheels." From the outside world, the narrator is able to see the inside function of the universe. Being outside lets him see the intimacy of the universal, and when he's inside, he sees the artificial potential of another world inside of his normal, domesticated existence. The play in the theater becomes a world in a room, and the machine of the universe is behind the dome of real stars. Foer maintains the contradictions of cinnamon shops, but does it by having his narrator step through the curtain of falsity and pretension. In Foer, "The curtain rose, and I stepped into the illuminations. I could feel the waves of laid bare of dreams." In Foer's dreamland, the contradiction comes not from the interior and exterior spaces of the universe, but from knowing a precise location. "I could not forego the opportunity I had now. This would take me even further from home. I ran rather than walked, anxious to lose my way. All I wanted was to be unsure. I found myself lost." In Foer's reworking, the narrator desires the feeling of being uncertain. Not only does Foer's narrator desire a fundamental contradiction, this section of the text turns Schultz's original wholly inside out. In this section of the story, Schultz's narrator is calculating and frightened of getting lost in the dark, unrecognizable streets. In this space of the story, Schultz writes of his trajectory and his coming to realize where he is once he does get lost. The narrator then plans a route to recover from being lost. Here, Foer's Tree of Codes folds Schultz's The Streets of Crocodiles. But Tree of Codes also unfolds the Street of Crocodiles when the characters stay inside of a bedroom and dive inside of Mr. Charles's own body. In the story Mr. Charles, Schultz writes of his uncle and his fitful sleep. As he is waking up, the narrator begins to describe the growing tumor inside of his uncle. Charles then begins to dress, and while dressing, he feels the room rejecting him. After dressing, he slinks away from the judgmental room. Then he walked towards the door slowly, resignedly, hanging his head, while someone else, someone forever turning his back, walked at the same pace in the opposite direction, into the depths of the mirror, through the row of empty rooms which did not exist. Here Charles is not comfortable in his home, and the tumor is making Charles himself into a home. The mirror offers an alternative interior, a pocketed fold of reality, so that Charles can walk away outside of his home and also walk into the depths of his home simultaneously. Rather than the mirror as an actual mirror on the wall, Foer adopts this object as a function of the knowing subject. With eyes like minuscule mirrors, I could not contain the groaning, swelling, deep pulsation of the enormous awe, those colossal exuberances. The only living and knowing thing was me. Here Charles is folded into the narrator's character, and in that transformation is made into a self-assured subject. This assuredness comes out again in Foer's choice to keep the idea of turning inside out. In Foer's text, he writes, "Out of the depths of yesterday, I wanted to turn inside out," and so maintains the idea of the narrator's desires as the potential instigator of action. In Schultz's text, the phrase reads, Charles yawned out of his body, out of the depth of all its cavities, the remains of yesterday. The yawning was convulsive, as if its body wanted to turn itself inside out. Here the act of yawning overpowers Charles, and instead acts upon him. Charles's body has more power than his thinking self. An involuntary gesture, a near instinct, threatens to undo Charles, while in Fowler's version, the narrator seems capable of mastering time itself.